As Pope Leo continued his early days in office, he made several quiet but meaningful liturgical decisions. He restored gestures like genuflecting at the moment of consecration, brought back Latin in parts of the Mass, and introduced moments of sacred silence. These are not flashy changes meant to grab headlines. Instead, they quietly affirm that the holy mysteries of our faith deserve our full attention and reverence. In meetings with bishops and cardinals, Pope Leo spoke in a calm, yet firm tone. Many expected grand new programs or flashy reforms. Instead, his focus remained on renewing hearts and deepening prayer life. He emphasized silence, meditation, and holiness, rather than launching ambitious initiatives. He understood that the life of the Church begins in prayer, not just in plans or buildings. Critics have already voiced concerns. Some say a return to tradition could push away young Catholics or undo recent efforts toward reform. But Pope Leo seems unmoved by such opinions. He isn't chasing popular approval. Rather, he's rooted in something timeless and deep, like a tree with firm roots. Beside refreshing waters, his leadership quietly speaks volumes. It's not about loud words or media stunts. It's about living the truth, day in and day out. This new direction stirs hope in many Catholics. Not because of big gestures or public acclaim, but because of an authentic, quiet confidence. There's something deeply comforting about a pope who refuses to chase headlines or mimic the spirit of the age. Instead, he remembers the true purpose of the Church, not to echo the world, but to transform it. Pope Leo's start does not reject the modern world. Rather, it asks the world to remember what the Church has always been called to be, a bearer of eternal truth. He didn't erase the past, nor rush to build something new. Instead, he reminded us of who we already are, followers of Christ, called to live by the light of the gospel, shaped by tradition yet open to serve today's world. This quiet renewal is already bringing something back, a sense of identity, dignity, and mission. For years, many faithful Catholics whispered doubts, worrying that the Church had lost its way. Now, they are beginning to lift their heads again, not because of loud promises, but because of the steady presence of a shepherd who speaks with truth, teaches with clarity, and leads with humility. In Argentina, Archbishop Hector Aguirre had warned of a church slipping into silence, compromise, or confusion. He bemoaned empty seminaries and a weakening of religious vocations. He spoke of Catholics living together as roommates instead of honoring marriage. He lamented the Church's retreat from public moral witness. These concerns were shared quietly by many, but few spoke them so plainly. Aguirre saw the shifts taking root in his own country, the land of Pope Francis's origins, and he called the Church to wake up. Now under Pope Leo, Aguirre hears something different, a renewed call to clarity, to truth, and to prayer. He senses in Pope Leo's actions and tone what he once longed to hear. This is not simply nostalgia for an older time. It is a heartfelt desire to rediscover what the Church's mission truly is, and who she is, a sign and instrument of God's presence in the world. This hopeful turn does not come easily. It is not a quick fix or a media campaign. Instead, it unfolds one small act at a time, one prayer, one gesture of reverence, one moment of silence. But in those seemingly small moments, seeds of renewal take root. The Church remembers what matters. The faithful remember the dignity of the Mass, the holiness of the sacraments, and the importance of living the gospel fully. In the weeks and months ahead, all eyes will remain on Pope Leo. Some will watch cautiously, others with hope, and still others with worry. But many hearts are already breathing easier, sensing a shift in the air. This shift is not a turn backward, but a step forward in fidelity, forward in clarity, dignity, and strength. The Catholic Church has weathered storms before. She has walked through dark valleys and found her way through troubled times. In this moment, if Pope Leo stays true to this beginning, this quiet return to the core of the faith, then perhaps he will guide the Church toward a new spring, rooted in tradition, yet alive for today. As we reflect on the words of Archbishop Aguirre and the early signs of Pope Leo's papacy, we find a path forward, a Church that treasures her past, stands firm in her truths, and reaches out to the world with clarity and love. This is a journey of renewal, not repetition, renewal born not of quick fixes, but of steady, prayerful fidelity. If you feel that same sense of hope stirring in your heart, you are not alone. Catholics around the world are pausing, remembering, and praying. They see in this quiet renewal the chance for a church that is both ancient and new, both rooted and responsive. A church led by a pope who holds firm to what matters: truth, tradition, and the call to holiness. As this journey unfolds, let us continue to pray for Pope Leo, for Archbishop XIV, and for the entire Church. Let us pray for renewal in seminaries, for fidelity in marriage, and for courage to proclaim the gospel boldly. Let us pray that each gesture of reverence, each moment of sacred silence, becomes sparks that bring light back to the Church and to the world. The journey is just beginning, but hope has a way of taking root in quiet places. May that hope grow and flourish in our hearts, our communities, and our world. As more days passed under the guidance of Pope Leo, something subtle yet important began to happen across different corners of the Catholic world. Priests who had felt unsure or isolated, in their desire to uphold reverence and tradition, found encouragement. Young seminarians, many of whom had quietly longed for clarity and sacredness in their formation, began to speak more openly about their hopes. Parishes that had felt the tension between the modern expectations of the world and the ancient demands of the faith began to rediscover the peace of simply worshiping with humility and depth. This wasn't a movement created by marketing or loud declarations. It was a quiet ripple effect born from the witness of a shepherd who did not try to reinvent the faith, but to renew it from its core. Pope Leo's early decisions reminded the Church of what had been hidden, not abolished, not denied, just forgotten in some places. Simple practices like kneeling before the tabernacle, moments of silence during the liturgy, and the use of sacred music, all began to feel new again, because they were novel, because they had been missing for too long. In seminaries and classrooms, discussions shifted. Professors who once hesitated to speak directly about traditional teachings now felt more freedom to teach the faith in its fullness. Seminarians began asking more serious questions, not just about ministry and leadership, but about holiness, sacrifice, and truth. It became clear that something real was happening. Pope Leo's vision was not a return to the past, but a recovery of what had always made the Church strong: truth, rooted in tradition, lived with courage. At the same time, many faithful around the world began to speak of a new peace in their hearts. It wasn't tied to big events or exciting reforms. It came from a feeling that, once again, their church was being guided by someone who knew where it had come from and where it must go. This peace was not an escape from the problems of the world. Rather, it gave them the strength to face those problems with renewed faith. Families who had long tried to raise their children with Catholic values but felt overwhelmed by confusion and mixed messages in the Church began to find support. Homeschooling parents, parish volunteers, and small prayer groups all started sharing more openly about how Pope Leo's leadership was encouraging them. It wasn't just about new policies. It was about rediscovering what it means to live a Catholic life, joyfully and clearly, without apology. Of course, challenges remain. No Pope can fix all the problems of the Church in a short time. The divisions and wounds of past years still exist. Some voices still argue that tradition is too narrow, too outdated, or too closed to the modern world. But Pope Leo seems unshaken by these voices. He does not respond with argument or anger. Instead, he continues to move forward with steady steps, rooted in truth, guided by prayer, and led by love for Christ and His Church. One of the most beautiful signs of this renewal has been the quiet return of devotion in the lives of ordinary Catholics. Eucharistic adoration has grown in many places. More people are going to confession, seeking holiness, and reading the lives of the saints. Young people are discovering the power of silence before God and the joy of taking their faith seriously. These changes may not be dramatic or headline-grabbing, but they are real and they are lasting. Archbishop Aguirre once feared that the Church would become just another voice in the crowd, blending in rather than standing out. He saw how the faith was being watered down in many places, how truth was being traded for popularity, and how the Church's mission was being reduced to social work or vague spirituality. His concern was never about appearances. It was about the soul of the Church. And now he sees hope in Pope Leo, a pope who is not afraid to speak the truth, not afraid to lead, and not afraid to remind the Church of who she really is. Even in places where opposition to tradition still exists, there's a new openness to dialogue. People who once rolled their eyes at reverence are now beginning to ask questions. Why does tradition matter? Why is silence important? Why has the Church held certain teachings for centuries, even when the world rejected them?